Hello, this is Shannon Kleibrink, and you are listening to the Future of Curling Masterclasses presented by Curling Canada, with support from the World Curling Federation's Development Assistance Program. In this episode, we learn how to raise funds from various sources to reinvest in the future of curling, and we discover why people and organizations give. This masterclass is presented by Kerrie de Gooijer. By day, Kerrie is an agronomy operations manager, but by night, this rockstar volunteer has led a rural Canadian curling club to new heights, including a successful fundraising campaign eclipsing $800,000 in grants, sponsorships, donations, and community support.
I'm Kerrie de Gooijer. I'm a volunteer with the Melfort Curling Club based out of Melfort, Saskatchewan. I'm the chair of the Revitalization Project. It's a multi-year, multi-phase fundraising campaign to do some capital upgrades to our infrastructure. People donate money to causes, so it's not what your curling club is doing, it's why you're doing what you're doing. And it's not about just throwing rocks down a pebbled ice, it's why you enjoy this sport. And when you can really start to nail down the whys behind all of this, that's what will take your fundraising to the next level and help you secure the future of curling in your community. Businesses, organizations, and people want, if they're donating money, they want to empower. They want to be partners in an uplifting story. They want to have an impact in their community and enrich their citizens' experiences. I think it's pretty safe to say that nobody gets excited about donating to a curling club just so that we can subsidize our utility and insurance costs. You need to take it a step further. One key thing in all of this, I think there's a lot of key things, but one is that you need to show that you're using the money to continue to be a self-sufficient organization, a self-sufficient business. How are you using that money to achieve your mission and where you want to be? How are you creating positive experiences? And through it all being positive and having lots of fun. I think that's really important too. When it comes to grant writing and capital fundraising, there's a lot of information on Google, how to lay out your campaign, how to figure out the whys behind everything, and how to do all these things. But in my experience, if you've never done something like this before, all that information is really good, but it makes it seem really easy, and it's not. It takes a lot of practice to kind of figure this out. I'm an examples person. If I see an example, I can run with it, and so throughout the next few minutes here, I'm going to share some pretty specific curling examples. You know, some of the whys of why our community really enjoys curling and is willing to invest in it. So I thought I'd start with just a little bit of backstory on Melfort and maybe a little bit about, you know, where we're coming from. We've had a relatively active club. Our membership numbers have always been pretty stable, and we have a lot of good community support. We are located in downtown Melfort, but we are independent from the municipality. So our nonprofit owns the land, the building. We're responsible for all operating costs and infrastructure costs. Now, what happened was, and this is all looking back, but we didn't know what we didn't know. We're very heavily volunteer-based, and things were going well until they weren't. And we came across a situation where we really needed to make some infrastructure upgrades and fast. Otherwise, we were going to be shut down. We needed to raise $420,000 to replace our ice plant and a portion of our flat roof, but we had no money to do this. And so this is what began the journey, the start of our journey, the Revitalization Project, this multi-phase, $1.1 million project. And we phased it. So phase one was definitely the reactive panic phase for us, because like I said, we didn't know what we didn't know. All of a sudden, this happened to us. We had to think fast and figure out how to accomplish our goals so that we could continue on. We've learned so much. We started this a year and a half ago. We've learned so much, and now we're kind of at the point where now we're starting to be proactive. We've solved our phase one reactive phase. We're going to be around for a while, and now we want to continue to be around for a longer time. So I'm going to share some stories about this. If you're in a situation where you need to raise money to accomplish your goals, whatever they are, you got to think of what are your avenues for receiving money. So a number of things. There's the fundraisers, like your raffles, your pancake breakfasts, and those, they serve a purpose, but the other thing you have to consider is what's your scope? How much money do you need? If you're looking for $500,000, pancake breakfasts aren't going to cut it. You're going to be there for a long time, and you need to be as efficient as possible. The other avenue would be from sponsorships and donations. And within that, you could have individuals and families donating. You could have your local businesses and your corporate businesses that maybe operate in your community. And all of them kind of have similar things that maybe make them tick, but they're all a little bit different. So you have to be cognizant of that. And then finally is grants. And I'm talking from various levels of government. And grants is what you're going to need to focus on or consider if you're looking for a significant amount of money. So Google has a lot of information on how to lay out your campaign. And the most important one probably is you need to get the funders and the public to care. And so how do you do that? This is the $1 million question. I think if you've always been in curling, we maybe take this, we just assume everybody knows what curling is, but you need to assume that nobody knows what curling is. You need to assume nobody knows anything about your curling club, and you have to assume that nobody knows anything about your community. And so how do you concisely get the public and the funders to care? The other interesting thing about capital campaigns, and this is something that I guess I didn't really realize until I Googled, there's a quiet phase and then there's a public phase. And in the quiet phase, this is what we did in our campaign. The quiet phase, you're actually fundraising up to 60-70% of your project costs before you even make the public appeal. And so this is a great opportunity to refine your campaign. You're going to learn a lot as you go. You're identifying who your top prospects are, who you think your top supporters will be, and you're talking to them a lot. And you're trying to come up with some sort of agreement or, some sort of agreement that will work for everybody. So infrastructure grant opportunities. Again, this is from various levels of government. I know there's a lot of curling centers across Canada that you're owned by your municipality, so your municipality will handle a lot of your infrastructure needs. But even if that's the case for you, this is still really important to be aware of how these things work, because you may need to lobby your local government to apply for grants on your behalf. There's significant opportunity with some of these grants, opportunity to cover up to 80% of your project cost. And if you think of your efficiency of your campaign, how huge that could be, this is really worth exploring. But you have to be proactive with these things. So you have to be proactive with these things. Asset management, if you're broke down, you're kind of too late for these opportunities. Or if you're considering like building new or something bigger, then you really need to be proactive and be ready. Why proactive? Because grants take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to apply for them. You have to gather all your data, you got to gather your information. Some grants require studies to be done. You need to get ready for that. The other thing is these grant opportunities aren't open all the time. So at this moment, if you were to look for infrastructure grant opportunities, at least in Saskatchewan, there's nothing available. All the money is used up at the moment. But someday it'll get replenished. And so you need to be ready for that. And then when these applications do open, they're only open for 2 months of the year. And then you apply for them, and then it takes months and sometimes over a year and a half to hear back on whether or not you're approved or not. I think one of our messages, or my messages, is that if we did it, you can too. No one in our organization had written a grant before, but we really, really needed this money. So we found inspiration, and we talked to a whole bunch of people that knew more than us, that had successfully received these grants before. And at least in Saskatchewan, we could see lots of examples of small villages and towns, a lot smaller than us, where the community rallies behind their community center, whether that's a hockey rink, maybe a curling rink, or a community hall. Lots of examples of fundraisers that raise significant amount of money from a population a lot smaller than us. So we would see examples like that, especially early on, and that really gave us hope. For us earlier on, there was a lot of feelings of frustration and being overwhelmed. Like, how are we gonna do this? This is impossible. But we saw lots of examples across, at least in our case, across Saskatchewan, communities much smaller than us, where the community rallies behind their community center, whether that's a hockey rink or a curling club or a community hall. And that really gave us hope. So look for those kinds of examples. If they can do it, you can do it too. If we did it, you can do it too. And we talked to lots of people. So we did receive a significant infrastructure grant, and for that particular grant, before we applied for it, we found past recipients of it. And I saw a lot of small villages and towns that had successfully received it, and I called all of them. And they gave me great tips and tricks. And I'm so thankful for all the help that we received through that process, because that really made a difference. So we raised $800,000 in 16 months, and $470,000 of that was from various government grants. So that's why I'm kind of focusing on that, but that's just one part of it. When looking for grant opportunities, at least in Saskatchewan, there's the Parks and Recreation, Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation. They have a really great website that outlines a lot of grant opportunities. They include upcoming grant opportunity deadlines. When you're looking for grant opportunities, a really great place to start is your regional or provincial Parks and Recreation department. Maybe your local community even has a department like this as well. There's a lot of great resources. There's a lot of great guides of grant opportunities that are out there, grant opportunities to be aware of. Start looking into all of them. There's also federal grant opportunities as well. I'm a big advocate of practicing applying for grants, even if you don't think you need them yet. Because when you need them, you're in panic mode, and grants are really hard. But the more you practice them, the easier they get. And there's a lot of things to be aware of, and once you kind of understand them, it really makes things a lot easier for yourself. A couple points with grants specifically. A lot of them, and it's not even grants actually, a lot of them want to see that you have money in the bank already. This is grants, as well as a lot of corporate sponsors are also looking for this, because this signals to them that you are a shovel-ready project. That if they give you this money, this will be the tipping point so that you can start your project, and you're going to finish it right away, and you're not going to go broke doing it, and you're going to continue on. So if you don't have money in the bank right now, figure out how you're going to get it. The other thing with grants, there's two types. There's ones where you can't incur costs until you got project approval. And I mentioned before how these things take a lot of time. So when you're considering your project timelines and just being aware of how long these things take, and that you can't start your project until you have you've signed the contract. In hindsight, probably the most important thing that we did early on in our grant writing experience was we found someone that had experience applying for and successfully receiving grants to review our grant applications. And this was a game changer for us, because early on, we thought we had a pretty good grant application, thought we were pretty good writers, we thought we had a compelling story, and we found this lady that reviewed it, and she tore it apart. And really thankful she did that, because we would have been applying for these grants, not receiving them, and wondering why we're not receiving them. So it's always good to get an outsider's perspective on your grant applications. So I just said that writing grants is really hard and they take a lot of time. So a lot of people are probably thinking, well, I don't have time for this. What's the benefit of it? But there's a lot of other benefits to this. And the more you write grants, the more you start to see trends in what they're asking you and why they're asking you it. And it helps you, at least in our case, truly appreciate and love our curling rink even more. Because now we understand what they're asking us, and now we understand what are our own goals and what is our vision and what could the future look like. It's basically a standard question on every single grant application. So that's one benefit of writing grants. If you're not really sure where to start and you don't have a strategic plan, what better way to get started than starting to write grants? The other thing, you want to make the funder excited to partner with you. And if you're an organization that's maybe not that exciting yet, the more you write these grants, the more you can start to see what you should focus on. And the other benefit of writing grants is practicing being concise in your messaging. And I don't know, maybe this is just me, I'm a rambler. So this whole practice of writing grants has really helped us be concise in our messaging. And this is really important because a lot of people are busy. There's a lot of good causes out there. How can you be as concise and impactful as possible? And I think this takes practice as well. So on to curling as a sport. Curling is awesome. So make sure you're showing it off all the time. You're showing it off in your writing, you're showing it off on your social media and marketing materials. I think, again, for those of us that have been in curling all our lives, I think we really take this for granted. I know I took it for granted. I never really thought about why I enjoy the sport so much. The curling rink is a recreation and social hub in the community. If you think about it, it's really not even about the curling, right? It's a place to gather, it's a place to meet friends, it's a place to meet new friends. And so that's a really great thing for our communities. Curling as a sport's very accessible. It's a sport you can take up later in life. It's a sport that you can participate when you have mobility limitations. Lots of accessibility to the sport. It's a lifelong sport. So you have youth, you have seniors, you have everybody in between. And when you're grant writing, this is a huge benefit to you because now you can apply for a whole range of grants. There's lots of grants that focus only on youth, a lot of grants that focus only on seniors. You can apply for them all. The other benefit of curling is it's affordable. Now be careful that you're not too affordable, that you're not making ends meet. But what I mean by this is more so, if you've never tried the sport before, all you need to do, at least in our club, all you need to do is show up with your money and your clean running shoes, and we provide all the equipment for you. So it's a very accessible sport in that sense too. It's affordable. And then finally, the economic benefits of the sport. Now, this is something that we would focus on maybe more so when we're talking to local businesses in your community. Why do local businesses care if your curling rink is operating? What do they care? Well, the rink brings a lot of people to your community, especially if you're hosting bonspiels or championship events. People come to your community, they stay in your hotels, they buy gas, they buy groceries, they shop. So it's an economic driver. The other thing, recreation facilities makes your community an attractive place to live. So it encourages prospective employees to move to your community, prospective customers to move to your community and stay there. So having attractive recreation facilities and having a curling rink does that. A note on partnerships and the reciprocity behind partnerships. Now, thankfully, Melfort had a really good solid base with this. Back in the beginning when we were taking stock of who uses the rink, why are we important, we have a lot of great community partnerships, and that really helped all of our grant applications and sponsorship proposals and just general community support. So in our case, all of the schools come and curl as part of their physical education curriculums. The Melfort Special Olympics, this is individuals with intellectual disabilities. We've had this amazing partnership with them since the 80s. Really great stories behind that. In our case, the Northeast Newcomer Services is a brand new partnership for us. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And then the other thing that the other big community partnership relationships that we have has to do with other service groups and nonprofit organizations in our community. A lot of them, when they're doing their own fundraisers, and they're looking for a venue, we will often donate the rental fees in kind to them to help support them. And in the short term, I guess you're missing out on some rental income, but if you're thinking bigger picture, there's a lot of benefits to this. You're giving back to the community. We're so dependent on the community to support us. We need to be giving back as well. Other benefits, they'll write letters of support for you. When you're looking for volunteers for your events, they will often step up for you. So it's a really good thing to keep in mind is your community partnerships and relationships. Early on in your campaign, you're going to need to take stock. Who uses your rink? Why are you important? You need to gather data. It's not enough just to say you think the curling rink's important. Gather some numbers. Do a community survey. That's what we did early on. We did a community survey. We had a lot of responses, and one of the results of the survey was 99% of people think the curling rink's an important recreation and social hub in our region. And 25% of the respondents don't even curl. So that really gave us credibility. Another example of a question that we asked had to do with capital upgrades that our community thought was important to them. And I think it was 35% of the respondents said that improved accessibility was really important to them. So that when we were applying for the Enabling Accessibility Fund through the Government of Canada, I believe that that gave us a lot of credibility in our application to say, here's the numbers, not just us thinks this is important, everybody thinks this is important. We compiled letters of support from everybody, so that also strengthened our position. If you're doing capital projects, you need quotes from multiple contractors. And I said it again, I said it before, I'll say it again, talk to lots of people. If your community has a recreation director, or if you know of other communities surrounding you that have fantastic recreation directors, these people are amazing and they will help you. So a little bit about actually writing the applications or your sponsorship proposals. Watching negative language. So what I mean by that is avoiding the words no, don't, can't, hasn't, won't. Making things positive. So I will give you some concrete examples. In our case at the Milford Curling Club, it might be tempting to say something like this, and I'll follow up with what we actually said. Might be tempted to say our rink is old, the roof is leaking and has no insulation. But if you've never been to our curling club and you read a statement like that, what are you thinking? You're probably thinking, well, is this place condemned? Like what do you mean by the rink is old? But that's not the case. That wasn't a right way to say that. Instead, you could say something like, while our facility is well maintained, the building structure requires an upgrade to meet building standards and increase energy efficiency. That's what we were doing. That sounds a lot better too. Another example, in our case, the kitchen hasn't been updated in 40 years. So you see how I have the word hasn't in there. And also, who cares if something hasn't been upgraded in 40 years? What are you doing? So instead of saying that, you could say the kitchen upgrades will improve efficiency and safety. And on that same note, funders don't want to invest in something that's dying. So again, being positive and showing proof you're going to be around for a while. If things are maybe not going great for you at the moment, as long as you're showing how the money, the capital investment you're requesting is going to turn things around for you, I think that's very good. It's really hard to find money for operating expenses. If you're just doing what you're doing, there's no grants available for that, and you're going to have a hard time funding things you want to do. But for capital, you can find money for that, and new programming, you can also find money for that. It won't last forever, but you can find money for that. So you're just trying to think, how will this money help us be self-sustainable? And if you're a business, what does that mean? It means your revenues are more than your expenses. So if you want to continue to be self-sustainable, you need to figure out how to increase your revenues or decrease your expenses. And in our case, we could say something like, a capital investment of $400,000 will improve the R rating of our roof from R5 to R30 and lower our heating bills by 10%. You see what I mean by how it's going to help us lower our expenses and continue operating. Another example that we're working on right now, capital investment of $200,000 will make our rink fully accessible, will make it a more attractive venue for community events, and will increase our revenue by 15%. Quite recently, we received our first significant programming grant. We had quite a bit of success with capital infrastructure grants. We did receive our first significant programming grant, which was really exciting for us. And I'll kind of share a little bit about how we got it and how our approach was to applying for it. So the goal of this particular grant was to increase sport participation, in particular for equity-deserving groups. So if you're thinking of your own curling club, what are the barriers to your club implementing a new program? It's often finding a leader that's able and qualified to plan the events, create the partnerships, promote the event. That'd be one barrier. The other barrier is finding enough volunteers, maybe qualified volunteers, to actually run the program. So we received this grant, and basically what we're doing with it is we're trying to increase our capacity as an organization to grow sport participation. It's something that we're invested in, and it's something that this grant wants to facilitate. So we're increasing our capacity. We want to hire someone to be the leader in this capacity. We're going to coordinate some more newcomer family curling events. We're going to bring rocks and rings to rural schools surrounding us that don't have a curling rink anymore. And we're going to try to recruit more volunteers to help with deliver these programs by trying to reimburse their coaching certification fees. At our club, we're on a mission to write as many grants as we can. Like I said, they're a lot of work, but even when we're rejected a lot of times. Every time we're rejected though, it's still been a beneficial experience applying for them. We've learned something new every time. Previous to 2022, we applied for no grants, so we received no grants. And now the past year and a half, we have, like I said, we've raised $800,000, $470,000 of that is from government grants. And they're all kind of different, but they all have that same theme: efficiency to improve your self-sustainability, or increasing your capacity to grow programming in your community. The other way that we receive money to fund our project was through local industry and business sponsorship. So our local business community donated $320,000 to our cause. And we did this through a variety of ways. We offered naming rights. We have a new name of our building, the Borgo Curling Center. We had naming rights of our lounge, of our change rooms. We offered additional ice decal, advertising agreements as if they donated a certain amount of money to our capital project. They're going to be included on a permanent plaque. And then we organized a big community event, our 50th anniversary celebration, to kind of entice more sponsorship. And all of our big sponsors got to speak to these people. And it was a really great event. We did get some donations from individuals and families as well. But I'm going to talk about this 50th anniversary celebration again. During our quiet phase, when we're talking to prospects, we were calling everybody. Everybody verbally was saying, oh yeah, we love the curling rink, love what you guys are doing. And then it would be crickets after. So one reason we organized this event was to entice the sponsorship. We gave a deadline and we gave additional recognition. We had to set ourselves apart. And other benefits of this event, it got people in the community talking. People had curling on their mind. We held this in September, and people joined leagues because we had this fun event and really pumped up the community. So just wrapping up, fundraising brings the community together. There's lots of benefits to embarking on a campaign like this. You don't need to go quite to the extent we did, but if you can come up with something in your club that you want to upgrade, go through the motions of how you're going to fundraise for it, practice writing grants, engage your community, lots of benefits. I'm aware it's a lot of work, but you have to start somewhere. And in our case, it was a panic reactive phase and we had to do it really fast. But if you can start somewhere and slowly build up to something great, I think that's just very beneficial. Be willing to try new things. Not every idea is a good idea, but it's worth trying sometimes, thinking it through, and gathering ideas. In our case, we follow a lot of curling clubs all across on social media, all across Canada and the States, and we get to see lots of great ideas that other people are implementing. And you start to think, well, why can't we do that at ours? So thanks for checking this out. We were recently named the Curling Day Canada Festival location for 2024. So Melford's very excited to be the site of a national festival, and it's kind of bring everything together for us. And if you're looking for more information, follow us on our social media pages. We try to, because we're following a lot of other communities, we try to apply a lot of ideas that everybody else is doing already in our own club. So I hope this presentation was helpful. I wish you all the best in your own campaign. Thank you so much. See you.